Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Scuttlebutt. I'm your host, Sean Hall, Director of Programming with the Veterans Breakfast Club. We're a nonprofit in Western PA whose mission is to create communities of listening around veterans and their stories to connect, educate, heal, and inspire. I myself am not a veteran. I'm a civilian, and part of the Scuttlebutt is helping civilians to understand military culture. That's what the Scuttlebutt's mission is. Today, we have a veteran on with a very different kind of mission. He is Kenny Mintz. He is walking across America for several different purposes that we will get into. He's an Army veteran of 30 years, and his story is amazing. We get into his service, why he chose to join, his West Point years, leading up through until the point where he decided he's going to take this walk across America. I found it very interesting. A veteran who has served his country for as long as he has, and now he's taking a walk across that country and meeting the people that he served throughout his entire life. It's really interesting. And he gets a bit into the wisdom that he shared with the ROTC kids that he worked with, the cadets. And, what's great is that I was able to sit down with him and gain some of that wisdom without having to crawl a quarter mile. Thank you so much for enjoying the Scuttlebutt. If this is your first time joining us, please like, share, subscribe, ring the bell on YouTube. We have a full list of episodes available across podcast platforms or on our YouTube channel. Feel free to check us out on either. We cover a vast range of military topics that I'm sure you'll find something interesting within, but would love to hear from you as well. You can email me at Sean, SHAUN, at veteransbreakfastclub.org. Thank you again, and enjoy our talk with Kenny.
My name is Kenny Mintz. I'm a retired U.S. Army colonel, 34 years, 30 years as an officer commissioned, and I did 4 years at West Point, so I count that. I retired at 30 years and 1 month of active service as an officer in the United States Army last June, on 30 June.
Hey, congratulations and happy anniversary for the 1 year retirement.
It's gone by fast. It's been scary how fast it's gone. And so I'm an infantry officer, did all those sort of infantry type assignments, and had a great career in the Army. Probably about about 6 years ago, my mom was alive. My mom died 2 years ago from pancreatic cancer. But when my mom was alive, about 6 years ago, I was taking care of her a lot. She was really fighting against pancreatic cancer. She was very valiant in that fight and inspired me. She was just very courageous. And when I was 4 years old and my mom was 23, she was living in Washington, D.C. She'd ended up out there because things hadn't really worked out or weren't working out between her and my dad. And that's where actually her in-laws were. My grandparents were living there, and my grandfather had a civil service job there, and she ended up kind of with them, and then got a job and was actually doing quite well. I mean, she was on her own with me and thriving. And at some point she decided, I want to go out to San Diego, out to California, and start a new life out there. And, it was probably a bit of a fantasy, of what California was in the early 70s. And I would say probably in the early 1970s, it was a pretty magical place. And so she decided to go with a Navy family that was moving from the Pentagon to San Diego and needed somebody to drive one of their cars for them.
Yeah.
And so we went out to San Diego. My mom had, no college degree, no money really, just me and a suitcase.
Wow.
Got out there and, got a job, and eventually started her own company with some partners, a defense contracting firm that was successful. And, looking at my mom fighting the cancer and thinking about this journey that she had taken to California got me to thinking, and this idea popped in my head. Hey, I want to walk across the country when I retire from the Army. I want to walk I'm not going to retrace her steps because I don't really want to walk on I-10
Right.
through Texas, and southern New Mexico and Arizona. I decided I'd take a more Midwestern route, but the bottom line is this idea was born of her, this journeys that she had taken, and particularly because she was dying. So now I'm out here on my walk. I'm in Illinois right now. I've gone 1,037 miles since the 1st of April. I've walked 54 days. I walk about 20 miles a day. And I'm walking I started on the 1st of April at the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C., and I'll finish at Swami's Beach in Encinitas, California, which is just north of San Diego, which is the area where I grew up, and sort of the area where my mom settled eventually when she got to the West Coast. So the first part of why I'm doing the walk is because of my mom. And so, she died of pancreatic cancer. There's no cure for it. It's a deadly form of cancer. Usually you get that cancer and you live about 6 months. My mom survived for 5.5 years. And she was very involved with the Pancreatic Cancer Action Network when she was alive. She donated. She went to their yearly Purple Stride walk for charity. And she asked that, before she died, she said, can you make that one of your charities that you're walking for? So the first part of it is, associated with my mom and the Pancreatic Cancer Action Network. The second part of it is I wanted to honor the soldiers that I had lost in combat. So I served as a battalion commander in Afghanistan, 2011 to 2012, in a place called Zari District in Kandahar Province. I commanded 132 Infantry, Chosin. We lost 14 soldiers killed. We've lost about 18 to suicide. And I'll touch on that in the next piece of this. So I want to honor the fallen, and I settled on a charitable group called the Johnny Mac Soldiers Fund, and what they're going to do is provide a grant to scholarships that provide, college scholarships to the children of fallen service members. And so that was my way of honoring our fallen, to give to the progeny of those that had fallen in service to their country. The last charity is something called Operation Resiliency, and that's part of the Independence Fund. And what they do is organize unit level reunions, so company-sized units that served in combat together, who share a common experience in combat, and it reconnects these people together so that they can support one another. And what I believe is the best medicine out there is veterans who serve together to continue to support one another, just like they did in combat. If we can get through combat, we can get through life together. We can help each other. We can be there for one another. And so these guys put together a first-class event. It's structured. It's, you're doing fun events together. You're doing a civic project together. You're doing structured conversations where you talk about veterans issues. You talk about some of the tough stuff. And I experienced one of these reunions about this time last year with one of the companies in the battalion that I commanded. They asked me to come to this thing, which was a great honor for me. And I got to see this, firsthand. I got to see, guys reconnecting and listen to the stories and have great conversation. And then I got to experience it again later on when I was asked to come and speak at another reunion later on in the year. So that's my way to honor veterans, because we need to connect. We need to support one another. I believe that, that support network can help prevent some of the problems that we're having, at least, help people that are suffering, either from, post-traumatic stress or from addiction and all of the things, and really the isolation, because, as you are focused on veterans, our veterans of these wars, particularly the recent wars, there's not a lot of us. It's not like earlier generations where there was a draft and there was just a lot more people. It's a small group, and you go someplace, you go back home, and you don't fit in, and you feel isolated, and you feel angry, and you choose to start drinking or using drugs, and then that just sort of leads to self-destruction and suicide for some people, for a lot of people.
Right.
So what if we have a way to connect and reconnect? So that's what that's about.
These are incredible reasons to take the walk and the journey that you're on. And I'm so sorry to hear about your mother. She sounds like an amazing woman,
She was
resilient, and she had a head on her shoulders that she was going to do something headstrong.
Right. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep, for sure. And
go ahead.
Yep. I mean, my mom, mom and I were very close, and I got to take care of her, for up until she died. I did my duty to my mom, I think, and that I just, she deserved that from me, and I want to continue to honor her, as I go forward with this journey.
Totally.
I just want to say just one more thing. I know I'm talking a lot, but
no worries.
This walk is also, there's some personal reasons for it. Obviously, the personal reasons are connected to the causes that I'm walking for. But I also, I just want to do something, because this walk is a way for me to see the country and meet the people that I served, my whole life. And I get to do it because I choose to do it, because I have the freedom to do it.
Yeah.
And, I'm lucky in that I have health care, and I have a pension, and I have the ability to survive, financially, and take 7 months or whatever it takes to take this walk. And, I love this country, and I've served this country. So I just wanted to see it, and I wanted to meet these people. And I wanted to walk away from my old life, into a new life. And, I think a lot of vets tend to look back and go, gosh, I was really great, back when I was in the Army or the Marines or whatever.
Right.
I believe life's out in front of us, and we need to keep challenging ourselves and setting goals and accomplishing great deeds. You just have to choose to do it. And, I'm doing this because I've chosen to do it. And along the way, my fervent wish is to have as many veterans and friends and new people along the way come and walk with me.
Oh, awesome.
and feel that connection. Mm-hmm. And I've had a lot of people walk with me, and I've had a lot of people walk with me I don't really know. And it's amazing to me is, it just takes a couple hours of walking and talking, and there's that instant bond, there's an instant connection that just comes from that activity.
Yeah.
And, part of, what I'm also talking about is a bit of how we live our lives. We drive around. Most people are pretty angry. I got to wake up. I got to get to work. They're late. People are driving. They're not happy. People don't go to work in their cars happy. They're angry.
That's true.
Okay. And they don't come home happy.
Right.
They're in a hurry to get home. I always joke around, don't stand between a hungry hobbit in his pickup truck and his hobbit hole at night, when they're leaving work.
Yeah.
And Americans are pretty provincial. They pretty much live and die close to wherever they were born. Mm-hmm. So, finding connection with people through walking and talking, demonstrating through my example, that you just need to set a goal and go out and do it.
Yeah.
And everybody that's come to walk with me, they've left with, a feeling of accomplishment and thankful that they were there with me and that we had whatever conversation we had.
Oh,
and, and so I guess that's my very long soliloquy about it. There's probably a lot more I could talk about, but in terms of, sort of capturing the essence of why I'm doing it, that's really it right there.
It's incredible. And you touched on, it's interesting. You touched on a lot of the things that are actually in our, VBC's mission. Connect, heal, and inspire. And that's something that we sort of hang our hat on. And it's why I'm so happy that we were able to connect. Before getting more in detail on the walk that you're on, I want to kind of dive back into the early 90s. That's whenever you enlisted. Is that right?
Yeah. So I went to West Point. Got into West Point and started in 1987 and graduated in 1991. And then came in as an infantry officer in 1991.
So at that point, was there military service in your family that made you want to enlist?
So there was my dad was in the Marines. Both my grandparents were in the military. My grandfather on my dad's side was in the Army. And my grandfather on my mom's side was in the Navy. I had an uncle who was an Army helicopter pilot. So there was military. I didn't grow up in a military family. I grew up in San Diego area where there's a lot of Marines and Navy influence. So it was around, and obviously, it was sort of the Reagan years, and there was a resurgence of pride in the military. Right now we've got Top Gun 2 is out. Top Gun came out when I was in high school. So there was just, it was a different sort of a resurgence of pride in the country and in our military that was happening as I was graduating high school.
Yeah. And what made you join Army then, if it was sort of Navy Marines in San Diego?
It's funny is that when I was a little kid, we used to have to read these little biographies and do an oral book report. And I remember doing, some of the famous Civil War generals and World War II generals, and they were all West Pointers. So I was sort of fascinated by West Point.
Yeah.
And I never, ever thought I would ever go to a military academy. And there's a bit of a story to this. So I was a pretty good high school football player in San Diego, and I got interviewed. We were in the playoffs, and we had just won our second playoff game. And I got interviewed by the two big newspapers in San Diego. I was the athlete of the week or something, and they asked me, where do you want to go to where are you planning to go to college? Well, neither of my parents were college graduates. I was a good student, but I didn't really know how to apply for a military academy. I didn't have any guidance there. I didn't ask for help, So I said, basically, I always wanted to go to a military academy. I specifically said I always wanted to go to West Point, but I didn't really know how to go. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do. So eventually we won the championship that year. And shortly after that, my football coach called me up. I think I was actually in class, and called like the teacher in my class and said, "Hey, the coaches from West Point are here and they want to see you. Are you serious about going to West Point?" And I said, "Yes, I'm serious about it." So
wow.
I went to meet with the coaches. So it all kind of came, I think, out of this newspaper article that created, somebody probably told somebody, that's sort of how things were in those days, pre-internet. And I was a good student. So, I kind of was more of a, I was a scholar athlete, kind of a kid.
Right.
And so next thing you know, I was going to West Point. And
you were playing for West Point too?
I joined the football team. I made the team my plebe year, my freshman year. I was struggling a little bit with the whole being a football player and being a cadet. I I don't think my heart was really into playing football. I think I felt like I wanted to be more focused on. I mean, I went to West Point because I wanted to be an Army officer.
Yeah.
I mean, and that was what I was really about. And I was always a bit of a historian.
Mhm.
You know, I've always, enjoyed reading history. I was one of those kids, that would go to the library and read encyclopedias,
Yeah.
and just have a general knowledge of many things. And I would read, military history. And so this is a cool place to go to become an officer and learn.
Mhm.
I had this fantasy about what West Point was going to do for me in that regard. And somehow sort of, it almost felt like I was fated
Mhm.
to go there. And football was just wasn't in it. It wasn't in the cards for me. And,
Yeah.
ended up kind of being, as we say, a company man, as a cadet. And I enjoyed that.
Right. And what did, since your mom is such a heavy presence in this story, what did she think about you and going to West Point and enlisting?
She was super supportive of it. She was a defense contractor, so she had an association with a lot of retired military officers, mostly Navy and Air Force, and a couple senior Army leaders. But it was, the whole idea of the academy to her was a very positive route for me to take, and she was very supportive of it.
That's great. So you get into the Army. Is it what you expected? Is it kind of a culture shock? You wanted to be an officer, but how did that pan out? And was it the way you thought it would go?
I don't think I really knew how it was going to go,
Mm-hmm.
but what I found is that it was something that I really loved.
Yeah.
I really love soldiers. I love training. I love being out in the field. I was a infantry airborne ranger, platoon leader in the 82nd Airborne Division. I mean, I was doing the things that
Jumping out of good airplanes.
that I had visualized. And then, I got to continue to serve, and just amazing, everywhere I went, every time I served everywhere I served, even some of the jobs that were maybe not as glamorous per se, I just really enjoyed it. And I enjoyed the people. The Army is all about people.
Yeah.
And so I just found that, this was my tribe. And, I loved, the connection that you had with the people in your units that you served in. And so I was an easy fit for me.
Yeah.
And I just thrived in that environment.
Moving up into the early 90s, were you deployed Desert Storm, Desert Shield?
So I was commissioned right after.
Okay.
So, we missed the big one,
Mm-hmm.
We were like, oh God, that was our big chance. And, I went to the 82nd, and they all had combat patches and CIBs. And, I was like, I was the no combat patch guy,
Yeah.
kind of coming into a unit that had been, they hadn't really seen much combat, but I didn't really realize that. And, I got my chance after 9/11. So,
9/11 specifically, I always like to ask this because it's sort of, my young generation, the guys that are my age, that's when they sort of were enlisting at that point. So you'd been in for quite a while at that time. How did you, we always ask, where were you on 9/11? But more importantly, I guess, like, how did you see the military change? Because you had already been in for a while, so you were kind of used to a very particular, way of doing things. And then a lot of things shifted right after that.
So I was rare in that I'd already deployed twice before 9/11. I'd already been, so I hadn't been in combat, but I'd been to Bosnia twice. So I'd spent 2 7-month deployments. So I knew a little bit about being deployed, and just what that's like. And on 9/11, I was actually an observer controller at the Joint Readiness Training Center at Fort Polk, Louisiana. And we're just getting ready to go out on a rotation. A unit was in there to go through rotation when this attack happened. And of course, we were all sort of in shock for a while. We went through and executed the rotation. And then, things started happening, and, I'm in a training base, so I'm not in a regular, Army unit that's going to deploy. And then the following year, I was at Fort Leavenworth for Command and General Staff College when the invasion of Iraq happened.
Yeah.
So, I graduated from CGSC and, went to the 10th Mountain Division. And, in terms of how like the Army changed, what happened is the Army was very committed, and life became nothing more than getting ready to deploy, coming back, and then getting ready to deploy again.
Yeah.
So I deployed right away to Afghanistan. I was a major on a staff. Things in Afghanistan at that point weren't super kinetic.
Right.
But I got to do some neat things, and then I came back and I was, getting ready to deploy to Iraq as a battalion S3. And right before they were getting ready to deploy, I got pulled out to be a brigade S3 operations officer for 2nd Brigade, 10th Mountain. So what happened to the Army is not just this constant deployment cycle, but we also reorganized the Army. So we went from brigades, where, when you deployed, you'd get all of your various supporting arms would get, task organized to you.
Yeah.
We went through what's called transformation, and we basically transformed into brigade combat teams where brigade commanders owned all of the capabilities within their organization. Well, we had to go through that and create that. I was a field Iron Major when the Army was going through that. So I had to do it at the battalion level, where we created new companies, new platoons.
When you say Iron Major, just as a civilian, what is an Iron Major?
So in the Army, Major is the first rank where you're a field grade officer. And that means you do a lot of the rolling up your sleeves and the hard work that it takes to plan and coordinate all the various actions that, support and plan and do all the things that the Army does.
Yeah.
So you're at the first line of sort of executing and planning a lot of these things. So it was crazy, hard, busy time, fantastic experience. I ended up deploying again as a major with the 10th Mountain Division, 2nd Brigade, for 15 months to Iraq, south of Baghdad. And so, the Army basically changed the way it's organized. It changed, into this sort of war footing. And that kind of became normal for us for about 10 years.
Yeah.
And then continued on even, when I commit. So I after my time as a Brigade 3, I was a Brigade 3 for 2.5 years. That's kind of unheard of. Usually you're only a Brigade 3 for a year. Because of the way things were, because we were at war, because my brigade commander was comfortable with me, that just sort of ended up being the way it was. And then I went to Australia for 2 years as an exchange officer to their School of Infantry.
A little bit easier of a deployment.
That was not a deployment.
Okay, well,
that was my family came with me, and it was it was a great experience where I made many new friends. I got to see how another Army operates, and share some of my experiences with them.
Would you call that would be called an assignment, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
It's another assignment,
right?
But as an exchange officer, so it's our military has a lot of exchanges with foreign militaries, and there's a lot of foreign military officers that have exchanges within our Army, for example. It's a great program. So I did that for 2 years, and then I came back. I took command of an infantry battalion back at 10th Mountain Division. And I was already familiar with the division. I was familiar with deploying and all the things that it took to get a unit ready for combat. And, trained my battalion, and we deployed for a year. So I trained them for a year. We deployed for a year. And that was normal. And came back and went to school at the War College for a year, and then went back to the 10th Mountain Division as the G3, so the Division Operations Officer, and deployed again for another year to Afghanistan. Again, a division I was familiar with. Deploying was normal to me. Being back in Afghanistan was fairly normal to me. So it was, not what I had grown up with in the Army, where we were really a training focused Army. We were now a, operationally focused Army.
Right.
And I feel blessed in that I had the good foundation of training and understanding, standards for how you train, and knowing how to train and knowing how to resource training, so that when I was now thrust into a position where I was a little bit more senior and leading some of these organizations, I knew how to do it. I knew how to, synchronize combat power. I also knew how to train. And I had a lot of experiences that, in the training part of my career had prepared me for the operational side of it. And I got to, experience the Army in particular doing what it's meant to do, and do it very well and get really, really good at it. And, after my time in this part of my career, I started to go into another part of the Army. So I was selected for brigade command, but it was of a ROTC brigade. So I went and commanded the Northeast region of the United States for ROTC, officer training, for, everything from Pennsylvania, all the schools from Pennsylvania to Maine. And it was in that period where I started to formulate the idea for this walk. And I spent basically 2 years on the road visiting colleges, talking to cadets, doing, physical training with cadets. And then I spent, my 2 summers in brigade command training cadets when they did their cadet summer training.
What was that like? You started off very young into the Army, and then you flash forward through tons of experience within the military, deployments, the wisdom that you gain, the friends, the companionship that you gain throughout. And then you're seeing these young guys, and it's a very different world, and they're brought up in a very different society than the one that you were brought up in. But what was it like starting to impart that knowledge to them and seeing them take up the call to enlist?
Right. That's a great question. And it's a question that I could probably talk to you for a couple of days about, but
I'll meet you in Missouri, and we'll
you should actually, you should come walk with me. That would be really cool. So first of all, what I found is the cadets inspired me, because at the end of the day, all they really wanted to do is be a good leader. There were probably some that might not have felt that way, but what I saw was this commitment to be an officer, these young people that really want to serve, really want to be a good leader. That's all they want to be.
Yeah.
It's a selfless sort of way of looking at the world. And I was very proud of them. As you can imagine, young people today are different from when I was young. When I was young, when a senior person spoke to us, it was sort of a big deal. Younger people today are more comfortable with authority. They have a different, they do have a different way of looking at the world that I don't fully understand, but I do understand how the Army is. So I had a method for getting the attention of cadets. And so for physical training, I would go to every school and I would do the same routine. I'd meet them on some field. I would demonstrate to them, the proper, technique for conducting individual movement techniques. So low crawl, high crawl, and 3 to 5 second rush. So those are individual soldier tasks that all soldiers in the Army need to know how to do. Mm-hmm. And I would demonstrate them, and they're physical. So I would physically show them how to do it, and then we'd practice, and then we'd start our physical training session.
Yeah.
So I'd get everybody lined up, and I would basically control the movement of the formation as we did a 3 to 5 second rush, in a series of rushes out to the 25-meter line. Mm-hmm. And then we would low crawl back. And then we would do the same thing out to the 50-meter line and then low crawl back. Mm-hmm. And then to the 75 and low crawl back. And then to the 100 and then low crawl back. And then out to the 100 and low crawl back. If you low crawl for a quarter mile, I guarantee you're going to be very tired.
Yeah.
And scuffed up and muddy.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody can do it. Everybody's going to make it. Everybody's got their heart rate up. Everybody's dirty. Everybody's sweating. Everybody in the winter, everybody's freezing. Okay. Mm-hmm. And after this session was done, I found that I would have the cadets' full attention. And I basically used that to impart to them about 5 minutes of wisdom. And basically 3 or 4 key points. One, physical training. Yep, it's PT, but it's also Army training. So you're never going to have enough time to train your unit. So you have to be creative with how you use every minute that you have to train. So today we did individual soldier task and we did tough PT. That was functional. If we broke into units and did it as a unit, then it would be leader training, and it would also be a collective task of assault. I'm not going to wear you out with all that, but it would be a collective task, a higher level task.
Yeah.
I'll just sort of cut to the chase and say, I used to tell the cadets, there's only one thing I want you to remember about today. Yeah. About what, if you remember nothing else about being in ROTC, I want you to remember this one thing. Go do hard things with your soldiers. You go out here and crawl a quarter mile with your soldiers, and you're going to earn their trust.
Yeah.
Because everything's about trust. Everything's about mutual respect. Go out there and do hard things with them. And if you can just do that, you're probably going to be a pretty good leader, because you're probably a pretty good leader already if you're willing to do that. So that's sort of how I did it. I was heavily involved in cadet summer training. Mm-hmm. And sort of creating what was the field training exercise that we did. And that was the crucible to evaluate the character of cadets, put them into a stressful situation where we see them for who they really are. Mm-hmm. And the good, the bad, and the ugly. And no matter who you are, when things are really hard, you're going to show in a very honest way what kind of person you are. Right. And that's what we created. And we created an environment for cadets that was harder than they were capable of. It was beyond their skill level. Mm-hmm. But that's okay, because guess what? When they're going to be lieutenants and captains and majors or whatever rank they deploy at, it's going to be the same thing. Right. Create an expectation of complexity, create an expectation that, the situation is going to be much more complicated, and that you're going to have to figure it out. And that's what leaders do. We figure it out. No matter how hard it is, we have to figure it out. And that's what we created for that. And that you don't always have a higher headquarters that's going to tell you exactly what to do, that you have to develop the situation based off of the intent on the ground.
It gets messy. It's very messy.
It's messy. It's a messy business. And I think, unfortunately, we tend to teach cadets, well, you're always going to have an operations order. You're always going to have this thing in writing that's going to tell you exactly what you need to do. Well, it's not really like that. Most of the time, you're looking at your mission and going, okay, well, here I am in this particular place, and I've got to figure this out. How do I support the mission with the resources I have available to me? to accomplish the purpose that I've been given here. And there are no orders coming. You have to figure it out. And that's what we try to create for cadets.
Do you think that you, and this might be a dumb question, do you think you came out of West Point a fairly good leader, or do you think that you developed into a good leader over the course of your career?
I think that I was very motivated to be a good leader. Mm-hmm. That my and that's what West Point imbued in me, is this desire to be an authentic and competent leader. Mm-hmm. And I don't know for every individual what they came away from the experience with. Do I think that West Point purposely developed that in me? I think it could have been a much better experience, but I do have to say, for better or worse, I did come away from there wanting to be the best leader that I could be.
Yeah.
Now, once you start, leading and start, actually, going out into the Army, your learning curve is really steep. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I used to tell, the cadre that I commanded as an ROTC brigade commander is that, don't worry a whole lot about the tactics. Teach them what you can about the tactics. What's most important is, are these the kind of people you really want leading soldiers or not? What is the character of these human beings? Because you'll learn, I learned more in my first year in the Army than I did in all the other years prior to that about tactics, about my job. Mm-hmm. My commanders, my NCOs, everybody taught me. And if you're willing to learn, it's all there for you to learn. And that's what I found. I mean, I grew up in a great unit that developed me and challenged me. Mm-hmm. And so, I carried that foundation with me, for the rest of my career in the Army.
Yeah. Let's flash forward to the walk, the journey you're on. We talked a bit at the beginning about why you're doing it. Talk to me about the boots on the ground. You start day one, knowing that your first step there is going to take you on this journey across the country. It's going to be difficult. There's going to be challenges. What's going through your mind in the lead up to the walk?
Well, for one, I wanted to be confident in my abilities. So I trained mm-hmm. for it. So I trained for 6 months. I experimented with shoes and socks, and, sort of what I wanted to do is train my body to be able to walk at distance, 5 or 6 days in a row every week.
Yeah.
And so I started the walk confident. I had a route, so I knew, where I was going. And then, the biggest hurdle was the logistics support piece. How was I going to survive this thing? And I was blessed in that through a mutual friend of a friend, a guy named Jim Niebling, who owns a trucking company, decided he wanted to support me, and he went through a third party and got a van donated to me, and then has provided a driver on and off. So that took care of the logistics. So now I don't have to worry about, hey, come pick me up at the end of the day and drop me off at the beginning of the day, or, resupply me when I need to be resupplied. I now had the foundation for the logistics part of it. In terms of, how I approached, basically my goal is to walk about 20 miles a day. I do look at my route every day, and I've deviated from my route, and I basically have used the route that I created as a guardrail. Mm-hmm. And I've found that, one of the biggest challenges out here is avoiding traffic, avoiding heavily trafficked roads. So I've spent a lot of time going out of my way to walk on backcountry roads so that I could actually focus on walking and not on dodging vehicles, and I can pay attention to the world around me and be a part of the environment rather than trying to go fast, because I'm not really trying to just get on a state highway and have countless cars and trucks driving by and just listening to that all day. I've had to do it quite a bit, but I've learned now that whenever possible, get off the beaten path. And and so I take each day at a time, one day at a time. I know where I'm going, so I'm not worried too far about, worried about that.
Yeah. The Pacific's not going anywhere,
And I truly focus on what do I got to do today? What do I got to do tomorrow? Mm-hmm. And I don't worry and think about, wow, I've got Kansas out in front of me and I've got to figure out how to get through New Mexico. I mean, I just don't think about it because, I don't need to worry about it right now. I've got a mission that I have to do today. And every day is different. Every day is its own challenge. Every day is a new experience. It's new people. It's meeting new people. It's different terrain. It's a different part of our country. It's a different vibe.
Totally.
And it's been really interesting.
How many miles is it total?
It's over 3,000.
Okay. A lot of people do like the Appalachian Trail. Like my brother did part of that, and you're thinking like, that's a fair distance, but then you think you cut it horizontally and you're across the country. Like Appalachian, I think, is like 2,100 ish miles.
Yep. It's I'll end up doing about 1,000 miles more. Mm-hmm. But the AT, you're carrying your gear and you're carrying your tent, and it's a different kind of challenge. Right. Where you're not just moving every day, you're also surviving.
Yeah.
You have to carry your food. You have to figure out, how to get a shower and how to clean your clothes. And, and it's really, about connecting with the people that you might meet on the trail, because you end up meeting people. My journey is a little bit different in that I'm trying to be a little bit more broad in my connection, because people have basically flown in from from all across the country and then linked up with me because they can. Yeah. AT, it's a little bit harder to do that. Yeah. And then, I also, every day I sit down and I share, what I'm doing. I write, a summary of the people I met, the places I went to, and some of my impressions of things. And I post my pictures, and I've created a way for people to follow along and share in my journey through social media as well. So a little bit of a different type of challenge than living out of a backpack and dealing with that sort of other type of journey.
There's still a lot of time though in your walk that you're in your head, because you might be walking by yourself a lot. And how do you, my brother, I mean, he was young when he tried the AT, eventually got kind of bored, which, at his age, I don't blame him. But, do you find solace? Do you find meditation in this walking and 20 miles a day, continuous every single day, taking one day a week to break? But like, how do you keep that drive, going?
I think that first of all, I always find something that's interesting to me. Not always, but almost always. Mm-hmm. There's always something that strikes me, and it gets me thinking about something, some aspect of life, some aspect of our country, of our society, of our culture, of the future. So I always find some kind of inspiration, both positive and negative. I guess I'll say that there's some negative things I've seen about our country, but I've seen a lot of positive and I've seen some negative. That just gives me cause to ponder, and it almost always keeps me focused mentally. Yeah. And then I take a lot of pictures. So I'm always looking for the next shot. What's the next kind of cool thing that I'm going to see? And that kind of keeps me mentally occupied as well.
Right.
And I always am finding interesting things
No doubt.
to see. And you know, I think when you're on the AT, you know, you're surrounded by trees, you're in the forest, you occasionally get a glimpse of the outside world. I think it's really important that you have somebody with you, at least that you can settle in with at the end of the night, you know, at the campsite or wherever you're camping. Um, it is lonely. That is a part of this thing. It is a little lonely, but most of the time I've had somebody with me.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's part of what's made this really great is how many people have made an effort to join me. And a lot of people that don't, you know, in some cases I didn't even really know have stayed with me for like a week. They just, you know, they've enjoyed it. So I just always find something out there that's interesting to me.
And two thoughts based on what you were just speaking of, because I want to get to the idea of, you know, society and the culture, America that you are witnessing. It's kind of like, you know, the final thought I want to get to. But before that, you've gone quite a distance so far. You're always looking for the next picture. Can you paint us a picture of the most beautiful thing you've seen so far?
So I was in Indiana, and up until just a week ago, I was really meandering through, you know, I would say hill country, all the way from Western PA through, you know, shorts, you know, through West Virginia, Ohio. And I was in Indiana, meandering through hills, and I climbed up a hill, and I was just standing there looking out over this valley. And you know, you could be anywhere. You could be in the Midwest. You could be out west. It was just this very beautiful scene of pastoral, you know, crops, you know, planted, big puffy white clouds, this one lonely road with a sort of a solitary tree. I felt like I was, you know, in the midst of a beautiful painting.
Yeah.
And what you realize, you know, is that if you pay attention, and we often don't because we're just too busy in our daily lives. I mean, there's a lot of beauty I find beauty in our, you know, in our natural world every single day. And I just never really had time to pay attention to it. And here was this, you know, sort of breathtaking scene that I was in the middle of. And I actually did like a little video to share it online. And I lingered there for a little bit just to enjoy it. You know, the wind was blowing. It was quiet. You know, there was some birds chirping. It was just a very, very, you know, peaceful, pastoral, and beautiful moment.
One of those ones that's difficult to walk away from. You don't want to leave it because you're capturing it.
Yeah, I definitely wanted to capture it.
Yeah.
I would say that I'm always driven to move on, though.
Yeah.
It's a weird. I don't like to linger.
Yeah.
I'm always feeling like I need to keep moving, and it drives me. So I love that. It's a mission. It's good to be on a mission.
Totally.
And so I enjoyed the moment, but I guess the other thing is when you see something beautiful like that, you don't know what the next valley is going to have for you. You don't know what new surprise you're going to see, what new sight or experience is going to, you know, that you're going to come to. And that's kind of been the routine. I mean, yesterday, you know, I'm walking through Illinois. It's pretty boring, right? It's flat. It's, you know, I've been kind of etch-a-sketching my way across on country roads.
Yeah.
To stay off of the highways. And, you know, I suddenly found myself on a dirt road. It was like a county road that's dirt. And you know, it feels pretty good to walk on a dirt road when you've been pounding the pavement and the gravel for, 50 some odd days.
Yeah.
And this road's about 5 miles long. So I got out in the middle of this thing, and it was just, I was like, wow, this is, not only is it pretty beautiful out here, but, I imagined, settlers or whoever moving west, they would have been on a road kind of like that. They would have been on a dirt road, and again, every day is something new, something beautiful. I find beauty every day. I find something interesting every day.
Totally. So back to this idea of, I find it really interesting being a veteran of the military, serving the country for as many years as you did, and then finally getting a chance to sort of walk across that country and meet the people that you served. What has that experience been like? And people are very different from DC to Illinois, and I'm sure they're very different from Illinois to California.
Yeah.
But I would assume that most people would have the same particular response to your journey and saying like, that's pretty inspirational to walk across the country. What has your experience been like?
I'd say that people's reaction has pretty much been the same. The kindness and generosity of strangers has been uniform everywhere I've gone. In general, when I walk alone, people are less inclined to engage me. Maybe just because I'm a pretty big guy, and I might just look like a weirdo out there walking along, I guess. But by and large, people are interested. They ask you why you're doing it. Many people go, wow, I really wish I could do that. People have been very generous, and I call it, it's just the generosity of strangers. I mean, I've had people who I've met people sort of in passing, and they're just amazed and sort of don't believe what I just told them, and then they'll like go home and get on their computer or get on their phone and find my social media and be like, wow, this guy's really doing this. This is legit. And then they'll come find me and want to talk to me some more.
Yeah.
And as I meet people, I call it connecting the dots. I mean, you meet somebody in a town and they spread the word, and then you meet somebody related to them farther on, and they're waiting for you and they want to talk to you, and all these connections happen, along the way. And that happens over and over and over again everywhere I go. You meet somebody, they share your story with other friends, and then sort of, I'll say it's the power of social media, and that I see a very positive aspect of it in that regard. And you start to meet people. Like I met this couple at this little bar called Fran's Bar in Buckeyesville, Ohio. It was the end of my walk, and my support guy Eric was driving the van. He's like, hey sir, I'm stopped over by this bar. And I'm like, that sounds perfect. It's a hot day. Let's grab a beer at the end of this. And we go in there and meet, there's like these two people in there. We meet the bartender, and of course they're like, wow, you're walking across America. And we take some pictures, and they start following me. And I had written a story like 2 days prior to that about I'd watched this guy on a 4Runner herding cattle, and he was just driving around, going cow, 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 and all the cows were moving in a line and just going where they needed to go. And I laughed to myself about the Ohio cowboy, and I wrote about it. Said not quite as elegant as the cowboys in Yellowstone, but it works. Yeah. Well, I get a message the following day after I'd met this couple, and this woman introduced herself. She said, hey, I'm the daughter of the people you met at Fran's Bar, and that guy you saw herding cattle was my ex-husband. And I told him your story, and he laughed. Yeah. And that's what happens. You go out there, and I'm mostly in rural America. America.
Mm-hmm.
Not, I'm not hanging out in suburbia much.
Yeah.
I walk through suburbia, but I don't, it's different.
Yeah.
People are a little bit more engaging in the rural, not super engaging, but you tend to meet more people.
Totally.
And so, that's just one example, but there's lots of examples of meeting people who get interested in your story. They share what you're doing with other people, and they get excited to meet you, and they find you. A guy I served with, his mother lives in Clay City, Illinois. I was there, a few days ago, and she was excited to meet me. And she told some of the people in the town, that where she lives, and they organized a little dinner for me.
Oh, that's awesome.
At the Methodist Church in Clay City, and people came to meet me. It was like 10, 15 people, but it was just very touching, that they would take time out of their life just to meet me and break bread with me.
That's fantastic.
So it's been, it's been fun to make that connection. And that's been the same. It's been very similar as I've gone along. And honestly, up until I sort of got out of the hill country of Indiana, and I finally sort of got into what I would call the traditional Midwest, the terrain has been pretty much the same, and where the way people live has been pretty much the same. Now I'm in obviously the Midwest, where you have, it's flat, you have much larger farms, but I'm still in rural America here,
right,
and small towns, most of which are, not, economically, on the greatest footing,
right.
And that's, part of the experience, the American experience I've had so far.
Awesome. We talked about sort of your preparation, your thoughts during that first day, but play this out. God willing, you make it over to California, finish, you finish, you get to the end. One, what do you hope to have gained at that point, and where do you see yourself going on to the next journey?
I think there's a part of me that, first of all, I've got to say, I'm not looking forward to the end. I don't think about it. I'm sure it's going to happen, and I'll be surprised, and it'll probably be very emotional for me. I'll probably be in shock that I've actually made it.
Yeah.
And it'll be a very poignant, emotional reaction. What's next? I don't know. I'll probably write a book. I'm a pretty good writer. I like to write. I'm going to write about the experience. Hopefully I can discipline myself to do that, because I think it's important that I do this. It's something I really want to do, is write about this experience. I want to tie in my service in the Army to this experience as well.
Certainly a different level of mental focus than walking across, but
it's discipline. It's playing with pain. It's a mission focus. So, I wake up and I'm proud. Like at the end of the day, every day I'm proud. I'm proud of what I just did. I accomplished something very real and very tangible. We spend a lot of times in our life, we don't even know if what we do even makes a difference. A lot of times, I know I walked 20 miles or whatever I walked, and I've advanced, a certain distance across the country. It's a very pure and true existence. And again, like I said earlier, I feel blessed that I have the freedom to do it. Who knows what's going to happen, and what relationships or what type of ideas are going to come out of this. One of the things I love about, obviously I'm passionate about what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I have, I feel, and I have a lot more energy. I have, I wake up after about 5 or 6 hours of sleep, and I'm ready to go every day. So I'm driven in a way that's feels good. It feels good to have this kind of energy. It feels good to want to get up and do this every day.
I like that sort of what the positive idea against what you had said, like people get up, they're angry, I gotta go to work, they're late, all this stuff, but the positive drive of getting up and being like,
right.
I got a mission and I'm going to complete that. That's very inspirational.
And I think the way we live our lives makes us angry. I mean, we live, most of us live in suburbia. We don't know our neighbors. We don't have a sense of community. Maybe we're working from home and we don't really we don't talk to anybody. I got it. We got these phones and computers, but guess what? We're human beings. Okay.
Yeah.
And right now, the way we're living our lives is counter to our humanity. Humans need each other. We need to be connected to each other. We need to be able to communicate with one another. We need to be able to talk, walking and talking. Human beings occupied every corner of the earth, walking and talking to each other. That's how we got to every corner of the earth, except for, maybe the Pacific Ocean, okay, Micronesia or something.
Right.
But the bottom line is that's, we're starting to forget what makes us human. And living in suburbia and having to drive every day and drive everywhere, not only is it not very healthy for us because it's making us more and more sedentary. We spend more and more time in traffic because there's more and more people on the road. And, we don't have a lot of places to walk and ride a bicycle in this country.
Right.
Okay. I mean, you just don't.
Yeah.
That's another issue that we have. We have these millions of miles of railway that's unused.
Yeah.
Tear it up and make it into a freaking bike trail.
They're doing that a lot in Pittsburgh.
On their feet.
Here in Pittsburgh, everything's rail to trails. So it's been good to see.
Well, we need to take that rail to trail concept across the country.
Totally.
I walk. There's a railway that goes all the way across Illinois. It's not in use. It can't be used. I mean, it's decrepit. Pull it up. And what would that do? What happens when you start getting people out on the trails, walking and riding their bicycles? You create another economic, effort.
Yeah.
Where people want to stop in the little town to get an ice cream or sleep for the night, or they need to get their bike fixed or get a coffee. You create a whole industry that's focused on a walking trail that used to exist along a rail line because that rail line was the main economic thoroughfare.
Yeah.
If you don't live off the interstate and you don't live, in a big city, there's not a lot of tax base out there. Here's a way to create something that's good for us, our health, our mental health.
Yeah.
Which is another huge problem we have in this country.
Exactly.
Okay. We wonder why we have so much problems with depression and all the other things, because we spend our freaking whole life going from point A to point B to point C. We don't see the clouds. We don't see the sky. We're not in nature. We're angry. And we've created a life for ourselves like that. And we're just living in that way.
Yeah.
We don't have to do that. We can live another way. We just have to invest in it. And freaking gas, who knows how, it's not even, in the future, maybe gas is going to be so expensive that we can only drive, in rare.
It's going to force us to walk. At that point, it's just going to force us to have to walk to everything. So
walk or ride, or maybe, we just have to work closer to home. We have to live in communities again. We have to actually talk to people, and not live, in the world of Instagram and TikTok and Snapchat, and actually be a part of, the world that we're in.
Kenny, I don't feel like I had to, army crawl for a quarter mile to get my full focus on you. But I'm very inspired by what you're doing here. And I want to know, how can we help spread the word? Where can we follow you? When people want to support your walk, how can they do that? So
you can go to kennywalksacrossamerica.com. And on there is a link tree that will give you the links to the 3 charities that I described. There's also an online store where you can buy cool, Kenny Walks Across America gear, hats, and shirts and mugs and things like that, which will support some of my, my financial needs out here.
Mm-hmm.
I also have a GoFundMe on there, and people have been very generous to me. And then it also gives you a link to my Facebook page, which is Kenny Walks Across America. I also have a group on Facebook called Kenny Walks Across America Group. And I'm also on Instagram at Kenny Walks Across America. And I'm also on LinkedIn.
Okay.
As Kenny Walks. If you friend me at Kenny Walks on Facebook, that's another way to get to me. Mm-hmm. So KennyWalksAcrossAmerica.com, that's the easiest way to remember. And obviously I'm walking for good causes. The money you donate goes directly to the charity. I'm not a 501c3 charitable organization. So if you donate money to me, it's just for my use. I do have to pay for food and gas and hotels and, well, not gas, but hotels and stuff like that. And so, anything that you donate is very appreciated. And I need your support. I need your encouragement. I need people to follow me and read my stuff and, give me some input, and come walk with me is really sort of my battle cry. Come find me and walk with me.
That's awesome. And we will get that. I will put all the links into the description here on YouTube, or if you're listening as an audience member on one of the podcast platforms, you should be able to find all these links in the description. I hope you reach out to Kenny if he is coming through your town, that you're able to link up and say hi and walk with him. Kenny, I'm sorry that you've already passed by Pittsburgh. Or else I would have stepped out the door for you. But I'm so happy that I found out about you and that we were able to have you on the podcast. And I wish you Godspeed getting across America. Thank you for your service. Thank you for my freedom. It's been a pleasure today to talk with you.
Thanks, Sean. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Good luck out there. And I'll be following you on Facebook.
Cool. Thank you.